Continuing about my brother Bob's new pickup truck. He taught me how to drive it, and he showed me how to change the brakes, and he was great teaching me mechanical skills. I was 7, I guess, around, and we went to get some topsoil, and my 2 brothers and my dad were shoveling the soil into the truck, and then they went down the highway to find some better soil, and they told me to drive the truck up to where they were. So I did. That was my first long trip, several hundred feet or something. But I had the knowledge that Bob taught me how to drive. And so I was showing off to my friends one day. This was in Elliott Lake, and our house was on a terrace. So behind our house, the slope went down, and there was another row of houses down below. And so I was showing my friends how the gears work and everything. And then for some reason I said, and when you're done driving, you should always put the gear shift in neutral. I don't know where I got that idea. I think maybe that's because you put it in neutral maybe to start the truck. This was a standard transmission, which was more or less all we had in those days. So I put it in neutral, and we got out of the truck, and then we noticed the truck was rolling towards the edge of the terrace that would drop down to the street of houses down below. And my little friends got behind the truck and tried to stop it from rolling, and I got inside and put my foot on the brake pedal for all I was worth. And I was there for quite a while. I didn't know what to do. And fortunately, my middle brother Don came along, and he casually pulled the emergency brake or the parking brake, and then I didn't have to sit with my foot pressed on the pedal. But I learned that you should always leave the vehicle in gear. It was a kind of a little bit of a dangerous area there anyway. They should have had some little wall or something to prevent trucks rolling over the bank. I would often sit on Bob's knee, and I would steer as we were driving along. And we got into a kind of a tricky intersection one time, and I got confused, and we ran into the curb, and I bent the tie rod that connects the 2 front wheels together for steering. So that was a little embarrassing, but I was a pretty good driver otherwise. And I was glad I got an early start because I had lots of opportunities later on to drive. That pickup truck, it drove us across the country from Elliott Lake in Ontario to Grand Forks in British Columbia. And it was a big trip. In 1959, Bob was driving his pickup truck, and Don and I were sitting there in the seat with him. There was only the one front seat. And we drove all the way across to British Columbia, and it was a big adventure and really exciting. I thought we were going to see cowboys and everything. Not so much, but we did go out west, and we stopped at my Uncle Charlie's place in Dryden, Ontario, I think it was. I think we stayed overnight, and there were relatives there who I had never met. Before I ever met Uncle Charlie, I had kind of heard stories about him. He seemed like an adventurous kind of a guy. And at that time on TV, there was a TV show called Alfego Baca. He was a real cowboy who rode a horse and guns and everything. And I asked my dad if Uncle Charlie was like Alfego Baca. And he said, no, he's not like him. So when I met him, he's kind of a chubby guy, and he won awards for gardening. I think he raised pigs and things like that, and he was always laughing and telling stories, and a really delightful person, but not like Alfego Baca. I only saw him that one time, and I think he passed away a few years later. So we continued to Grand Forks. I'm sure I'm missing some good Elliott Lake stories, but I can go back. We got to Grand Forks, British Columbia, which is the westernmost province in Canada, where Vancouver is. And my dad had known a man back in Ontario, and he kind of encouraged us to move out there. So when we got there, we moved into the house that his family had lived in, and I remember the rent was $46 a month for this pretty good house back in the day. And we had a big lawn and a big weeping willow tree, and the house was right next to a swamp, which was great fun, running through the swamp and sailing rafts on the swamp, and we had bulrush fights with other kids and a lot of adventures there. Anyway, I guess I'll conclude this video and start with another one about Grand Forks. So just to finish off, maybe our trip to British Columbia, part of it was going to have to be through the US because the roads weren't good enough in Canada or something. And we had a parakeet, a budgie bird. But apparently you weren't allowed to take animals or pets into the United States without vaccination or something. And I said, well, if Tinkerbell doesn't go, I'm not going to go. I'm going to just stay here. I didn't know how I was going to do that. I've been that way through my whole life. I put my foot down, but I don't have any way to make it work. So yeah, I wasn't going to go. I was going to stay there. How I'm sure the house would be sold and everything, but somehow it worked out that we were going to be able. I think we ended up kind of just not telling them about the bird. It was we had a camper on Bob's pickup truck, and my parents slept in there, and I think we just slept on the front seat of the other truck, a big 1 or 2 or 3 ton truck. I forget now. I think the three of us just somehow slept on the seat in there for the several days that it took to drive across the country. But so we drove. I think we did drive through the U.S. part way, and there was no problem with Tinkerbell, and so we got to Grand Forks, and I'll continue that in another chapter.